Hey, Debbie, how's it going?
It's going well. Thank you.
Good. Going really well. So how's the weather up there in Minnesota? You're
It
in
is
Minnesota, right?
northwest Minnesota, very warm and unseasonably warm, but very windy as always. So, yeah, it's
Yeah.
lovely. It's a lovely fall day.
Okay. Awesome. And you're like what, about 100 miles from the
Yeah,
Canadian
about
border?
80 miles from the Canadian border, 8 miles from the North Dakota border. So,
Okay.
we're right up in the corner.
Okay. Very cool. Well, I really appreciate you coming here on to here today to chat with me and to share your experience in the Think Eat Win program. So we just wrapped up working together one on one for about 6 months, and so I wanted you to be able to celebrate you and the changes and the success that you've had, and so that's why we're here. So I'd love if you would just share with everybody. Tell us a little bit about you, your background, and where you're at.
Um, I am, I was born and raised in Indiana, and I married a farmer up here in Minnesota. I was a farm girl in Indiana and married a farm guy in Minnesota and moved up here. We married 36 years ago, and we have four grown children and 11 grandchildren. And life's just very busy. We farm full time and have a couple seasonal businesses, and yeah, life is busy and full, but yeah, it's very good.
I love it. I always love hearing what you're up to when you say, "Oh, I was out on the tractor," or "I'm in the big rig truck," or just like that farm life is so
Yeah,
cool. It's
yeah.
so
In 6 months, I have been in a few of those different things. So that's true. When we've talked, yeah.
yeah, you absolutely have. So okay, cool. So tell me, like, what were you struggling with the most before you met me?
I would say just tired of being in a rut. Um, Tired of just not liking what I saw, not liking what I felt like, not liking my attitude about things. And I know it often was related to because I didn't like what I was seeing and going through and feeling about myself was reflective in the way I was outwardly maybe talking or thinking, maybe more just that self thinking, a lot of that self thinking, negative self thinking.
Yeah. I remember that when we first met, that one of the things that you said that was one of your biggest obstacles that was keeping you from losing this weight was the negative self-talk. And you really felt dragged down and like kind of in a slump, like you didn't feel like yourself. Can you kind of what would you say to that? Can you expand on that a little bit?
I just think it was that a lot of that mindless, not mindless, just that chatter in my mind that was just constantly just putting myself down for choices I'd made, whether it was eating too much or mindlessly eating and thinking about it later. And just, well, the group all know my big word is guilt, just the guilt that I don't think I put it in that word as guilt, but the more I worked through a lot of the written assignments that you had for us, it was pretty evident that's what it was. It was a ton of guilt.
You felt guilty a lot. That was
Oh,
quite the Yeah, that was quite the burden, and I really think, like, you also mentioned emotional eating, and so, like, you felt like emotional eating was making it really hard for you to lose the weight. Is that true?
right. Yep. Yep. Just felt like I was just in a pit and I did not know how to pull myself out. As far as exercising since 2020, I've been going to it's just a fit body boot camp. It's a half an hour workout, which I love that part. Since 2020, I have never stuck with anything like that long. So I always felt like that part of me, I had somewhat of a control of that control, but it wasn't it wasn't enough to bleed over to where I was really wanting to see that working on just saying no to some foods and no to my brain wanting to, reach for carbs when I was stressed or that sort of thing. It wasn't enough to get me out of that part. So the exercise part, I feel like I have that kind of underway. I continue to do that 3 times a week. But it was the food part and the mindless just chatter all the time that was going on in my head.
Yeah, it was really exhausting you, as I recall.
Yeah, it was.
Okay, so what else did you try before you found me? Like you mentioned, you tried Noom. Tell me about Noom. Like, why did that work for you? And if so, why? If not, why?
No, I it just tended to be a lot of, not that you don't have us track things either, but it almost got to where it was a little bit, it was almost obsessive, like just tracking things and putting it on the phone and all the, I don't know why, it just didn't do it for me. And I stuck in with that because I had a brother-in-law that had some success with it. So I stuck in with that for whatever the first program it is you can do, whether it was like 6 months or something like that. I don't know. Maybe I'd taken off like 8 pounds the whole time. And It just didn't seem like it got to the heart of things.
Yeah. Okay. And then you actually, like many years ago, had a weight loss surgery.
Yep. In 2005.
Yeah.
Yep. 2005, I had a lap band surgery. My highest weight was 274 pounds at that point. And I just thought that was going to be the end all to it all. Did a lot of extensive, back in those days, they had us go through a lot of, therapy. I mean, we had to go for counseling. We had to do group sessions. I look back and think that all that part of it was good. It wasn't like, oh, I want to have a lap band and here you go. I mean, we had to meet certain criteria and we had to go through certain steps to get to where they felt like you were ready for the surgery. So, had that. I lost it wasn't like super fast, but I lost 90 pounds. I was just shy of 100 over the course of the next probably year and a half or so. I mean, it did take a while. I didn't feel like it was like some surgeries, you lose a lot really fast. And I always had that band on my stomach, which, come to find out, looking back, it was too tight. I wasn't eating a whole lot of anything in a lot of ways. It was that part of it. It was a tool, and that's what it was meant to be. But because of the restriction I had, I know I wasn't healthy when I was going. I did not get benefits of food like I should have.
So what happened after? So you lost 90 pounds, and then what happened in the intervening years?
I think it was just getting back to mindlessly, because again, with a band, I mean, it's still there. I've never had it removed. The band is still on my stomach. I've had the saline that was in the band itself has been taken out. So I mean, it's not much, but I still feel restriction sometimes. I think it was just the fact that because you can kind of eat around it. So I got to where if I was hungry, I knew what foods could go down without causing me issue. And I would grab for those kind of things.
So did you regain some of the weight?
Yep, I regained. I just was looking at it. I added back 65 of those 90 pounds. So, and I mean, looking back, I thank the Lord I didn't gain back all of it and more. So I try to think on that side of it. But yeah, disheartening.
How did you feel about that?
Oh, hated myself for thinking I had gone through all that and then to turn around and gain back 65 of the 90. It's it's hard. I mean, it still gets me. Like, it's very disappointing. I'm disappointed in myself. I was disappointed in just the allowing myself to get back to that point again and to back to mindless eating. And I knew what would go down and go down easy. And that's, yeah. Do I regret that? I don't regret having the band because I feel like I don't regret it. But just kind of wishing I could have had something like this maybe a year after the ban. I think that could have helped keep me on a roll as far as the weight was coming off, but yet it's to get the mindset.
Okay. So what was missing that you actually feel like you found here with working with me in the Think Eat Win program?
Well, I think the one thing is when I saw you, I've told you before, but the thing that I saw on Instagram with you was, it's not what you're eating, it's what's eating you. So that was the clincher for me. That was why I clicked on you and I followed you for a while. It wasn't super long. But I thought, it's not, because face it, we all know what we should eat and what we shouldn't eat. I mean, I don't think there's anybody struggling with weight that would say, "Oh, I have no clue." No, you know exactly.
Right. It's the difference between knowing and then actually doing. Right. So do you feel like you know now, like how to take that knowing and plug it into doing?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I look back and I think the part I disliked it when I was doing it, but I look back, I liked all the paperwork that we did in the beginning. And, really, it was almost a little unsettling at first when I started it, because I thought, "Gal, we haven't even talked about food, really, for a while there." And it was a little bit like, well, what the world, what are we doing? So
because I'm always saying that, like, it's not so much about the food. And then when you get into the program, you're expecting it to be all about the food.
Right.
And we don't start there. Like,
no, and that's probably the part that I've liked the most, Betsy, is that I'm not counting. I'm not, even though, again, you have us do some tracking. It's not that, and I know we should. I could write down what I've eaten the last yesterday and today, but it's I think having the freedom of that off my back. Like, I didn't feel like that was a burden on me I got to count everything and I got to calculate and I got to look up how many calories was that. And that was the part, looking back, honestly, Betsy, I think that was a huge part of the freedom of it, is that I didn't have to do that.
Because your life isn't really conducive to doing. Your life is crazy, busy. So what did you appreciate? Because you were telling me this before we started recording. Like, what did you appreciate about the difference in this program as opposed to other programs where you do have to be so obsessed with counting and tracking everything?
Give me a hint, Betsy. What did I say? What was I saying?
But you were able to put in like a pretty decent effort, but not 100%.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
And still get results.
That was the thing I kind of came clean with, Betsy, just before we started, was the fact that I know in my heart I did not give 100% to this program. I didn't probably even give 75%. And I say that not at all. I'm not happy that I didn't. But I know if I had, I would have had better results even than what I've had so far. So I know it all works. But I'm still down almost 20 pounds. So
20 pounds.
I'm thrilled with that. Yep.
And you told me when we first met that in a year, you'd like to have lost 30 to 40.
Mm-hmm.
So here we are 6 months and you've lost 20.
Yep.
And that's with giving it 50% effort.
Right.
What do you attribute the difference to? Why did this work so well, even though you weren't 100%?
I think one thing I wrote it down, that I stopped listening to my thought urges. Those urges are those things that come in my head. I feel like you gave us permission to not listen to those. And that
You got
probably
mastery
for me
over your thoughts.
yeah, that was pretty big.
Yeah.
To be able to not dwell on the thoughts. And there were times when there's still time, obviously I've still got a ways to go, but yeah, there are times when things come into my brain, like if I'm on the stress level, I'll walk into the house and I'll think, now, old Debbie, you would go and have XYZ. And now I'm just like, I'm not going there, because the guilt that I had after I would consume that would be so overwhelming. And I would put myself down the rest of the day and probably into the next morning for what I had maybe indulged in or eaten something that maybe wasn't the best for me. I don't know. That still continues to trumpet for me, is that I like the feeling of not doing that better than the feeling of doing it.
Yeah. You've learned that tool of managing your mind and choosing, instead of letting those patterns choose for you and letting the food have the control over you. You're learning to rise above that internal narrative that kept you stuck for so long.
Right. And do I do it perfect every day? Absolutely not. I'm human.
Right. But tell me, how's your self-confidence changed since we
I feel much more confident. I think you can attest to that as well. Yeah, I don't beat myself up. I tell myself that God didn't make junk. I'm not where I thought I needed to stay forever. And I'm not going to let myself get back to where I was at, because it wasn't good. It was negative from beginning to end. And I didn't like me. And I don't want to go.
Yeah. Do you feel like you're more like who you really are now?
I feel like I'm getting there. I think there's still a lot more of me that I need to learn to love. I'm a process.
You've made huge progress, so I love that so much. So
yeah.
That's amazing. So what were maybe your two top skills that you learned in the program that you feel like have really contributed to your success?
I think one thing is thinking about what that food is going to do for me long term. I know one thing that you've talked about is like not snacking. That's a pretty big one for me. To not do any snacking. Think about the food you're putting in, that it would be good food, sustaining food, and like the whole night thing, like not to snack at night because you don't want your blood sugars to get all screwed up. And it's like, that's another thing. I don't know why that really hit me. Like I'm really trying hard. I don't snack at night. And that wasn't like me, because if my husband would want some ice cream, well, sure, I'd have ice cream or popcorn or whatever. And now I just have to ask myself, do I want to mess that up if I'm not hungry and I've eaten a decent meal? Like, why do I want to do that to my body? So some of those things I think go through my head. I'm just looking at some of my, thinking about what that intake is going to do for me long term. That's a big one.
Sounds like you're able to be pretty intentional now instead of just mindless.
Right. And I think that's really the crux of a lot of it, is just stop not thinking. I mean, think about it, but don't think to the fact that you're giving into that chatter that's going on in your brain, but stop to really think before it goes in. Am I doing the best thing for my body by eating this?
Yeah. That ability to slow yourself down long enough to make a conscious decision is definitely something I've watched you develop, and it's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
What were your favorite parts of the program? Like we've mentioned like worksheets and reflection assignments, and I think you mentioned we have group calls, we have one-on-one calls, we have all kinds of stuff. Like, what were your favorite parts of the program?
For me, I enjoyed the one-on-ones. I I'm not a big lover as in the group calls. Obviously, I didn't attend tons of them, and often I would be eating supper while I was doing it, so I'd be incognito and I wouldn't show my video, but I'd listen. Um, no, I enjoyed the worksheets. Like I said, those to me were where I started seeing some of the truth about myself that maybe I didn't want to um, admit, maybe outwardly or vocally. So those were good for me. And as much as sometimes, honestly, I would read through them and I'd start to do one and it just like, okay, I got to put this down because it was almost like it was too heavy because it would really hit me sometimes right between the eyes. Like, oh man,
Yeah.
I've got to come up with some answers here and I got to dig deep and I've got to really look at some of this stuff. So those, I did it as much as they're difficult. I would not skip any of those. Because I think
those
it can reveal truths.
Those really drive the breakthroughs.
Yeah.
So is your relationship with yourself different now?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You've been able to look at those places in yourself that you didn't want to see. How's that changed your relationship with you?
Yeah, I think realizing we can, you can blame what you want to blame. You can use excuses for what you want to use excuses for. I mean, the bottom line is, are you putting it in your mouth or are you not? Really? It comes down to that. Like, this is either going to be beneficial or it's going to keep me in this pit I'm in.
Yeah. Well, I love seeing how you value yourself so much more.
Yeah.
Because you committed to this process, because you committed to digging in, and you were willing to look those things in the face. And as a result, like, you're taking control of your life, and therefore your confidence is way up.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's worth doing that hard work when you feel good about yourself.
Right.
So that's amazing. I love it.
Yeah.
Okay. So was it worth it? Because, 6 months ago you told me, yeah, I think this will help. Like, what have I got to lose? So was it worth it for you to invest in this program and in yourself?
Yeah, I would say it was. Even at 50%. I'm giving myself 50. I mean, maybe it was more like 60 or 70, but yeah, it was because I just didn't like who I was, in all honesty. So yeah, it was worth it. And is it an investment? Yeah, it's an investment, but I think I'm worth it.
I love it. You absolutely are. That's amazing. Such an inspiration. I appreciate you so much sharing all of that with everybody who's going to watch this. Yeah. Is there anything before I let you go that you want to add?
The one thing I would just want to say that I've learned to not let food control me. And I think that's been the process of it all. Because it was controlling me. It was pretty much taking up most of my brain space, in all honesty. So that just feels good. It feels free to be away from that huge burden and not let it be controlling most of my day. Like, I mean, I honestly would. I would be thinking when I go into town, oh, what could I grab quick? Or if I was in the store, like, oh, and it's never good to eat when you're hungry or go to grocery when you're hungry. But yeah, it was way too consuming. And so I feel like that's the part that I think to be free from that burden has been huge for me. So yeah. And I would encourage anybody like I say, it's an emotional thing. It's a head thing. It's huge. It's a head thing, totally, for the most part, I would say, for a lot of us. So that has been, it has been good.
Okay. So do you feel like you have the tools that you're going to need to keep this weight off forever?
Yeah, I think it's very sustainable that I could definitely keep this off and continue to get more off. And I've got the papers. Even when I was sitting here before we started, just looking back at it's just really good to just look back and look at, like, these were my answers and this is what I was feeling, and it gives me the visual that sometimes is good to just remind yourself of where I was at.
Right. Yeah.
Knowing I've got a ways to go. Like I say, I by no means arrived, but I think I'm on definitely the right track from where I was before. And
Yeah.
there's freedom in not pushing numbers and not counting calories and not, being obsessed about that. That's been a freedom that has been really a wonderful thing.
Yeah. Amazing. Awesome. Well, you've done amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your experience.
Thank you
Yes.
very much.
All right, Debbie. Well, take care and we'll see you soon.
See you soon.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.